welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love talking about cards. I do. It's good, guys. It's good stuff. We're here again. We're talking about cards.
And we're all together.
All together.
I feel the love. I feel the love from our community and our patrons. Bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts indeed, Ted. It's funny. For anybody who knows how we do things, we just got off of recording our superlative February episode. So this is the first block of shows that we're doing after that, and it's amazing to think how awesome this community is. In February, we were able to get a whole bunch of new patrons. So by my count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 new patrons. And as we do always on our show, we would like to thank each and every one of them. We want to give a shout out to every single person who helps keep the lights, not just the light, but the lights on for us.
It looks like you have one single light in your room.
Yeah. But if you want to join the patrons and get a shout out every month, you can join us right here at patreon.com/cardtalk2018, and you can be eligible for some swag. If you want the big Card Talk swag, you have to be a patron by May. And then you'll be eligible for the big swag. Everybody's going to get a little something from us, but definitely at $5 a month by May, you get the big thing. So I would like to try to do this in one breath as per what I was doing before February. So let me see if I can do this. I would like to thank...
Get on standby for phoning an ambulance.
Right.
Good luck.
Okay, ready? Okay.
Failure means you'll be cast into the fiery chasm from whence this host came from.
Wait, I feel like you just insulted my mom. Anyways, the list of patrons is long, and let's see if I can do it. Ready? I would like to thank Tony, Valentine, Eric, Dan, Moritz, Anders, Shane, Micah, Chris, Reagan, Robert, Brandon, Scott, Joe, Alex, Edmund, Peter, Niall, Carl, Vardine, James, Joshua, Matt, Russ, Justin, Jason, Robert, Kyle, Daniel, Mike, Robert, David, Sean, Lou, and Phil. Yes! 38 patrons won't get me out of breath, but thank you everybody for helping us keep the lights on and growing the podcast to amazing levels. And it's because of you guys that we were able to put on Superlative February, which always costs us extra hosting fees, and give away a prize for every show that was there. And and I don't know, we also were able to make new relationships with some of our new what do I want to say? Our new patrons. I know that I've talked to Reagan on Facebook, and I've talked to Eric, and Micah and I are becoming fast friends over digital gaming, and so it's just really good to have an awesome group of patrons out there. So, but you know what, Grant? People didn't come here to listen to us tout how awesome our patrons are. They want to probably hear about a card, which is what we do. And probably they're going to be surprised, because what do we have in store today, Grant?
Well, in normal Card Talk fashion, we're here to talk about a card. But what's different is we're not only going to talk about one card, but we're going to talk about two. And these two...
It's the 14th dwarf. It's a twofer.
It's a twofer. Well, you could say that two is in Greek is like bi, so you have bifur, bifur. Is that a stretch?
Bifur.
It's the bifur. I don't know.
Right. Okay. So after they were done swearing in Brady's dwarf joke, we are talking about Ioreth and the Warden of Healing. So Ioreth is a 0 cost, 0 willpower, 0 attack power, 0 defense, 1 hit point Gondor healer. It cannot attack or defend. An action, spend 1 low resource to exhaust Ioreth, then heal 3 points of damage on a character. Any player may trigger this action. And the Warden is a 2 cost, 1 willpower, 0 attack point, 1 defense, 1 hit point Gondor healer with the text action, exhaust Warden of Healing to heal 1 damage on up to 2 different characters. Then you may pay 2 low resources to ready Warden of Healing.
Well, Grant, it was your idea to do both of these cards, and then Ted said, yes, let's do it. So talk a little bit... Grant, talk a little bit about why these 2 cards are, linked, but also different. Like why should we do one episode on them as opposed to splitting it into 2?
Well, both these cards are iconically similar. They are both healers from Gondor. They both heal really well. I mean, the Warden of Healing heals 1 damage on 2 different characters, whereas Ioreth, you're literally spending 1 resource to heal 3 off 1 character. But they are both the best healing in their respective field. In ally healing, like as ally cards that heal, these 2 rate above most of the others. They both exhaust to heal. They both have resource costs tied to them. Fair enough, the Warden you don't have to trigger to get that extra exhaust, like the extra ready. In Ioreth, you do have to spend a resource in order to use a healing, but they are both very similar.
Okay, Ted, why did you agree that these guys should be, why are these on the same show?
Yeah.
And let me just say before you get started, I don't
let me ask you a question and not let me answer it.
Right, exactly. I don't disagree that these should be on the same show. So go ahead. Now, go ahead.
Are you sure, David?
Yes.
Okay. No. Great points, Grant.
So the question, Ted, is...
Can we talk about cards, please, Ted? Will you please start talking about the cards?
Yeah, can you just get it out?
Yeah, it's good to recognize that fact that we're doing a special show, and it's primarily because these effects are so similar, and if we were going to do a show on one of them, we're going to be comparing it to the other one. So both effects, as Grant said, are very similar. They have resources tied to them, but in different costs in different ways. So it made kind of sense to me to say, yeah, why don't we just cover both cards? We can maybe tackle one first over the other, and explain the benefits of one versus the downsides of benefits and downsides of each one, and why you might want to use one over the other or both in some cases.
So, Ted, why would you use both? They're both healers. They're both Gondor, so why would you use both? Then we'll talk about some of the similarities and differences.
Yeah.
And don't say in a Treebeard deck, because that's one reason to use both, but that's the most obvious one. But go ahead.
The simplest answer is just it's just for a higher quantity of healing. Because if you look at, if you want to put more cards in your deck that heal, you'd want to do that, I guess, as you increase your player count. So if you're playing solo, do you need to have both of these in your deck? Probably not. Probably one or the other will do. But as you increase your player count, 2, probably get by with 1. But if you include the second one, you're going to be increasing the chances of you drawing a healer that has a repeatable healing effect in your deck. You're just going to be increasing your chances to get one of those effects to put healing on your table sooner. And in a fair amount of scenarios, managing damage is part of defeating the scenario, because there's either high archery or there are treachery cards that consistently damage you when they come out or make you assign damage to players. So there are plenty of reasons to include them to put more healing on the table.
So Grant, why one? I'm having a bad R here. Why run? Let me back up a little. I think that it's safe to say that the Warden of Healing is considered maybe the gold standard of healing in the game.
That is a fair statement.
I think
widely accepted by the community.
Yeah, and I think that Superlative February bore that out, right? Like the Warden of Healing was one of everybody's like best and favorite allies in the game. And so it's strong, right? It's repeatable. You just need resources. So if that's the gold standard, and then Ioreth is kind of the backup to the gold standard, maybe not next tier, but like slightly less tier. Like, why would you run Ioreth over, let's say, the Warden? I mean, Ioreth has some downsides. You can only use her once per round. Well, I guess, let's see, because she can't attack or defend.
Right.
And so you have to spend the one to exhaust her. So unless you're going to do some ally readying, which I'm sure that there's ally readying that happens in. She's harder to use repeatably in a round, more so than the Warden. So why would you run Ioreth over the Warden of Healing, Grant?
If you've got a higher direct damage, like targeted direct damage, you may want to run Ioreth over the Warden because you can take off the damage that much quicker. Say if you've got say archery 4 or 5, the Warden can't.
If you have archery 4 or 5, I would suggest that you're probably in a bad situation to begin with.
Exactly. Likely. But the Warden can't strip off that much damage in a single round. Ioreth can strip off more of the damage that is targeted. So any sort of damage that you are taking undefended from either attacks or direct damage effects, Ioreth can, as long as it's over 1 or 2 points, Ioreth is the better option for healing where allies are concerned. She's free to put into play. She only costs 1 to use her ability per turn or per exhaustion. And yes, that can get expensive if you're using it prolonged over the game. And compared to the Warden, is the cost more beneficial than the healing. So for the Warden, you're paying, say, 4 resources to get 4 points of healing done. At the same time, Ioreth heals 12 for the same cost.
Right.
So it's all down to what you need at that particular time. Is Ioreth better at healing multiple characters? No, she's not, because she can only target 1. The Warden can target 2. So it's double the healing, but it's less effective at healing more damage unless you've got Hero Elrond on the board.
Right.
Which affects them both differently.
Right.
Inside that context.
Right, because then the Warden can heal 4 points of damage, and then Ioreth can heal 4 points of damage.
Yeah. Also heal 4, right? That's very interesting, where they also heal 4, but then...
But different.
Right.
The Warden heals it on 2 damage on 2 different characters. So, again, it comes down to what you need and when you need it. And that comes down to scenario analysis of what you know can be thrown at you in that quest.
Yeah.
Right. What's your thoughts, Ted? Using Ioreth over the Warden, right?
Yeah. Well, Grant, I'll just build on his points because he brought up some great points. That Ioreth is, if we look at her, she can clear more damage quicker. Like her healing 3 off a single character is quite powerful. Like if you have a main defender that you're trying to keep alive, like Baragon, Spirit Dane, or even any high hit point character that's taking archery damage or undefended attacks, like Aragorn or Glorfindel, right? They have 5 hit point pools. You can more quickly clear the damage off one character by paying that resource, as opposed to Warden, who will do it at a much slower rate. Elrond certainly he accelerates both of them because he accelerates all healing, and at that point you're healing. It's twice as much damage off one character, right? Elrond's letting the Warden heal 2 damage off one character, where Ioreth is healing 4 damage off one character. And it's very easy to have a main defender have extra hit points. They could have 4, 5, 6 hit points with some Citadel plates or Erebor boots or Ring of Barahir, right? One of your kind of pet cards.
Pet cards, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's advantages to being able to heal that much damage quickly. Otherwise, you need to have multiple Wardens to get that same effect, or you're paying for Warden's response, which not a lot of players trigger, but you do if you're underwater, to pay the extra resource to ready him. So because he has that in there, it does make him certainly more efficient than Ioreth in that function, if you're willing to sink the resource into him every time. Because if you did, he would be healing more than Ioreth, right? Even without Elrond, if you trigger Warden one time, pay the resource and trigger him again, you're healing 4 net damage for that same one resource, minus the 2 costs. I feel like it's very mathy, right? You can map out how many resources you spend on Ioreth and how many you might someone can work on those numbers who's good with stats.
Yeah, let me clarify this a little, because I think for the first time, Ted, I think I'm seeing what you're saying, and I'm going to clarify as opposed to you seeing what I'm saying and you clarifying what I always say, is that usually the tables are reversed. But I think, when you put together a deck, you're going to have a hero lineup or a couple of key defenders. And if that hero lineup or key defenders has, a minimal number of hit points, 3 or less, you're probably not going to be using Ioreth. Jabir. We were talking about Jabir before the show. Jabir has 3 hit points. Ioreth is a waste on using Jabir, right? Not to say that he's not a Class A defender, because he is, because he's got an ability that makes him a Class A defender, but we're not going to use him as a... we're not going to use Ioreth to heal Jabir, because it's not... You don't get the full benefit. If you're running hobbits, my favorite archetype, each hobbit, certain exceptions, have 2 hit points. We're not going to use Ioreth. So it's about how many hit points that your key defenders have, or key damage absorbers, which mainly defending, but there are some direct damage effects that happen. Archery, huge. Sometimes necromancer's reach, things like that. But so if your key defenders or damage absorbers have maybe 5 hit points, like some of the beefy allies and some of the beefy heroes, then Ioreth becomes worth it. But I would suggest that if it's 3 or less, Ioreth really maybe not is worth it, because most of the time, like Frodo is a great defender but only has 2 hit points, right? Spirit Frodo. So what are you going to do? You're going to run, you're probably going to run threat lowering stuff.
Yeah, right.
but if you need to, and you have out, you can put a hit point of damage onto Frodo if you need to. Let's say you have to take two attacks or something in a round or something.
Shadow cards do direct damage to defenders all the time.
Yep.
He's susceptible to that.
Right, because his ability is only once per phase. So.
Yep.
So there's, so I think this is one of those decisions that rests solely on, who's going to be taking the most amount of damage. And if it's a low hit point character, then there's no reason to run Ioreth. The other thing is that Ioreth is unique, and that gives a whole host of differences between the two. So Steward of God. The Warden of Healing, Warden of Healing, you can have 3 out. And you can heal a whole ton of damage if you have all 3 of those guys out. Ioreth, you can only have 1 out. But Ioreth you could run as the cheapest MOTK hero in the game if you wanted to.
Yep.
So,
I
I
will
mean,
also
there's a lot of
just
crazy stuff. Go ahead, Ted.
yeah. Sorry, I just want to
No,
before
that's
we move
okay.
past contracts.
Yeah.
Sorry, just before I forget, you sparked inspiration. She's also really, really, really great for fellowship contract decks because she is a free cost unique ally. So she will help you flip, and then she'll be your primary source of healing. You have access to healing in a fellowship contract deck by helping you meet their requirements, which is awesome.
And what are the requirements of that, Ted? Remind us what they are.
The requirements are 9 unique characters. A fellowship contract deck cannot have any non-unique allies. And when you have 9 unique characters, you get to flip it over. And by flipping it over, you cannot play any more allies. And also, each of your characters receive buffs to their stats: willpower, attack, and defense.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So Grant, what about the? And I think you mentioned it your original thing. What about overall in general ally healing or character healing versus attachment healing or event healing? So I feel like ally healing is something the community likes more. I may be wrong, but like the Sylvan Tracker is great in a Sylvan deck, right? But I don't see people running Lembas much in a Sylvan deck. So character healing versus attachment healing.
I think the biggest thing is it's another body on the board for ally versus attachment. Another body on the board means you've got more places to spread damage around from direct damage effects, more targets for nasty treacheries just to discard, but either caught in a web or something like that, or one of the discard effects. But for me, I think I like attachment healing. I like Lembas. I like self-preservation, but I don't put them into many decks. Self-preservation is too expensive for what it does. If it had been 2 cost, I might have done it. Whereas sticking at 3 cost, it's a bit of a pill to bite when I can play the Warden of Healing for 2, Ioreth for 3. Lembas and Atlas are both nice. Lembas allows you to ready and heal off 3 damage, I think it is.
Yep.
Whereas Atlas allows you to remove a condition attachment and heal this. I think it's the same amount of damage as well. I think it's 3 damage as well.
I think it's all. I want to say you get to heal all.
All. Yep, heal all damage. I have
If you
it up
happen
in
to have
front
more
of me.
than 3, you have a big hit point pool.
So
is it because those sorts of attachments, with the exception of self-preservation, are condition meaning they have to be attached to certain types of heroes, where the Warden and the Ioreth can come into play and not have those limitations? Or
I think that's part of it, and the other part is they also get discarded when they're used. So you play Lembas, you exhaust the law or healer character attached to it, and then you heal off 3 damage and ready the character. And I think that's healing herbs, but
healing herbs, right?
yeah, but it's the same sort of principle. You're attaching something to discard it, and yes, you're getting a benefit straight up, like when you do that. But then that card's used. Unless you're playing some sort of recursion, you've lost that ability. And it all comes down to then, did I use it at the right time?
Right.
And whereas with ally healing, you still have that same, did I use it at the right time? But generally they'll be ready the next round unless you get like an unlucky treachery that causes you direct damage, exhausted characters, or some other effect that makes you discard characters.
One of the things that you're saying about using it at the right time is this is kind of adjacent to that is that I find that when I'm using Warden of Healing, I feel like I can get caught up on healing my characters, and I feel like a lot of other healing effects really don't make me feel like I'm getting caught up. Like in a scenario, if I'm getting killed with archery or just lots of direct damage from whatever, maybe I have to take an attack, or some chump comes in and I have to take something undefended because it's the beginning of the game, and I have 2 or 3 characters that have lots of damage on them at the beginning. I feel like the Warden of Healing can get me caught up, as opposed to Ioreth, which I always feel like I'm never quite able to get caught up in healing characters. Ted, what's your take on attachment versus like character healing?
Yeah, Grant pretty much nailed it. The Warden, and so did you, David. The Warden is the gold standard because it's a low cost, repeatable, sustainable healing effect. And if you have to, the Warden can even chump block something too, right? If you leave it ready for healing and you're like, crap, troll, old man Warden is gonna bite the dust to that troll attack. And the events, the events are one-time uses, and the attachments have extra supplemental effects that are very helpful to the game, but those are usually just supplements to your healing and to get those effects. The Atlas is it's a condition removal card. That's how it's viewed. It's not really viewed as a healing card, I think, by most players. This gets rid of conditions.
And the healing is just a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing with the Lembas. It's like the healing with the readying in conjunction is very strong, because you will defend an attack, take some damage, heal up and ready, and now you can defend another attack. And that's huge, because if you didn't have that ready and that healing in conjunction, you might have lost a hero.
Right. And that
where just the healing might not be enough.
Right. That self-readying is huge.
Yeah. But it's not sustainable. Then you have to, reforge it, or Airborne Hammersmith to recur it back to your hand, or dig for more copies. You nailed it. Warden is sustainable, consistent healing, and Ioreth, I'd say, really is a supplement even to Warden, with the exception of maybe, as you said, MOTK. I mentioned Fellowship already, but and then high player counts too. You want her ability that anyone can pay for it, that has a lore character, is really helpful, because someone is like, oh, we're drowning, I'll pay for Ioreth just to save someone's hero because we have too much archery on the board.
Right.
Yeah, she's definitely not sustainable long term, especially if you're using your low resources to pay for other things, like, say, the Ents, or like traps for like ranger spikes, or you've got other cards that require those dedicated resources. She isn't a viable option long term.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because however much we want to compare these guys, I almost think that some of the specialty healers are better than Ioreth, like the Sylvan Tracker, but that's just because that's the way I play. Like, I love playing Sylvans. Next to Hobbits, Sylvans are what I'm kind of known for. Maybe I'm more known to some people for playing Sylvans. And so the Sylvan Tracker is kind of the gold standard of Sylvan healing. Like, you don't put a Warden or an Ioreth in that deck. You don't put Ioreth in that deck because nobody has over 3 hit points in that deck, and you don't put a Warden in that deck because you want to save your lore resources for other more important things going on. So it's it's an interesting. It's an interesting duality. The one thing that I did want to ask about that annoys me to no end is that cannot attack or defend. There's only a couple of characters that have cannot attack or defend. And, one is Galleon, one is the Galathram Weaver, and it drives me bonkers.
I mean, for a character that's got 0 stats, I don't think it's much issue. I mean, you're also forgetting Gladriel cannot attack or defend.
Right, she actually can't quest, attack, or defend. She can't do anything.
Well,
But she
exactly.
can do everything.
That's,
though. It's different because she's in a category all by herself.
but
She's the
yes.
most powerful elf in Middle Earth, so you can't.
But the thing is, I think it speaks true to the card. She's a healer, so why would she be attacking or defending when she's spending her time tending the injured?
Yeah, when those orcs come, she's done.
Exactly.
She's gonna get. But the funny thing is you can't even sacrifice her to an orc attack, right? Because she can't actually defend against it. Which is
She's back in the
I
White
think
City
with
doing
her-
her thing.
they could have made her attack or defend. They could have let her boost her stats, and it would have been not overpowered. I feel like it would have been just perfectly fine. But if Warden got reprinted or revamped, I bet you he might have that same text
I would
He can-
say so.
to actually curve to keep, because that's just one more thing that actually makes him good. The fact that he is an ally that you can just throw under the bus, who ultimately, right? I said, if a troll attacks you for 6 damage and I jump with my Warden, he just healed 6 damage as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just super crazy to think.
But-
I don't know. You know, I don't even know.
You don't even know, David. You don't even know. But for a solo player, certainly the Warden is sustainable when you're looking at it in those terms, David. I know that's your usual perspective. So you're kind of like, hey, Ioreth, who's this lady? I got another dude who looks kind of like an old lady, and he's doing just fine.
Right. The old lady dude is definitely good. I'm surprised that you didn't bring up your Citadel Custodian in here, Ted.
Just because he is... Oh, that's true. Well, so they're both... If we want to circle around back to their traits, they're both the healer traded. Says, that only affects a handful of cards. One is the Athlas that we named.
Right, one is Athlas.
And the second one is the... I think healing herbs go on any lore character.
I thought it was
any lore hero.
Lore hero. Okay,
It can't go on
allies.
I can't go on character. I can't go on allies.
But I was thinking of the event, Houses of Healing, which is the 5-cost event that lets you bring a hero back from a discard pile.
Your lore, fortune, or fate.
Yes. And they come back in. The hero comes back into play with 1 damage on them, but it's a 5-cost event that you can exhaust a healer traded character to reduce the cost of the event. So Ioreth and Warden of Healing can both exhaust to reduce the cost of the event to resurrect a hero.
Yeah. And it goes into reducing the cost of the Citadel Custodian.
Yes, yeah. And then there's all the secondary benefits of being Gondor. So if you're playing, I guess, Leadership Boromir would boost their attack, which only really affects the Warden. And then you can have their willpower boosted by
Visionary leadership. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're all on that one. Visionary leadership. I don't even know if I've ever built a Gondor deck.
Side benefit, right? Citadel Custodian, David, as you mentioned, gets reduced by them being in play, because he gets reduced by... His abilities as cost gets reduced by 1 for each Gondor ally in play. And so if someone else plays Wardens, they drop Ioreth and a Warden, your Citadel Custodian costs 2 less. And then you play your 2 Gondor allies, now he's only costing 1. Boom. Right. Check that episode out for more details.
And why we hate him.
Why we love him.
I mean, so in the true spirit of the show, like, the reason why we started this show was to give people deck ideas. And I don't think that anybody's... I mean, of course there are support healing decks. But in general... Yeah, I mean, it's super unflashy, but it's super necessary in 4-player games, right? Like, it's
we're all not dead because you healed us.
right. I'm gonna quest for a bunch, and I'm gonna heal, and that's about it. I may do some location control, if I have Glorfindel and Aspaloth out, but yeah. Otherwise, I'm just gonna make sure that everybody else lives. But talk about some cases where you would want to, like, if you were going to build a deck. And Grant, I'll give you the same opportunity, but Ted, as the resident expert deck builder extraordinaire from Con of the Rings 2019, I learned you were amazing. What kind of decks do you include Warden specifically in? Like, of course, when you have Treebeard, you need healing of all sorts, Hero Treebeard. But that doesn't have to be the Warden. It could be any healing. But is there, any sorts of decks specifically that you build and you're like, I need to put the Warden in? For me, I put Hobbits. When I have Hobbits, I use the Warden because there's no specific Hobbit healing, so I'm always putting the Warden in because he's good for that. But do you have any specific cases where you're putting the Warden in a deck?
That's a great question. I think the real broad answer is Warden is actually one of those staple lore cards that in pretty much every scenario you need healing, and even if you run a single lore hero, 2 is not an unreasonable cost to get him on the table.
Because he's that valuable.
Right, like a 2-cost card. Like that's generally when I run like a splash or off-sphere hero. Generally, 2 is the highest I put in, because 3 takes a long time. You wait 3 turns to play 1 3-cost card, but to get a Warden on the table, very, very valuable, absolutely. But Ioreth has that flexibility where, like, I can put Ioreth in for nothing, and then only use her when I need to, and you strategically stack damage to get it in those packets. But yeah, aside from Treebeard, who needs as much healing as possible that we mentioned several times.
Right. In the Fellowship deck for Ioreth, right?
Fellowship deck is prime reason for Ioreth. She's really, really good in a Fellowship contract deck. I love it. There's really not another reason. Like, yeah, they benefit from the cards we mentioned. If you're playing a Gondor deck, like, the Citadel Custodian and all those attachments we named for Gondor, they count for those effects. But yeah, I'd say a lot of times it's run 3 Wardens and 1 copy of Ioreth because you kind of added a 4th Warden. You added another extra repeatable healing effect that's inexpensive to put into play.
Right. What about you, Grant? When you're building decks, is there a specific need other than what we talked about to put a Warden in a deck versus Ioreth? So in your 4th 300s deck, which one do you choose? Ted, I made him.
I can't.
Oh, okay. He was speechless there. In all seriousness, obviously in 4th 300s you can't play allies, but in what kind of decks do you pick to play? Warden over Ioreth, or is there a specific deck build where you're picking Ioreth over Warden? I mean, other than the ones that Ted just said.
In any sort of deck that relies on damaging heroes, so Gimli and Gawain, if you're running those heroes, if you're running both those heroes together, you want both of them in your deck. The Warden is strip off damage, and Ioreth is take off more damage. Citadel plates obviously increase their hit points, and then you slowly take off damage with the Warden. And if you're under for a big swing, you might need to take off a bit more, so you use Ioreth.
Yeah, and Matt reached out to me before Superlative February hit. Matt, one of our patrons that I've been doing the Hobbit playthrough with, and Ted and Grant, I think you've been playing the Saga campaign.
Yep.
He said, I can't believe you guys haven't talked about the Glowin engine. Ted, do you want to tell our listeners about the Glowin engine? Because I heard you breathe deeply when.
Well, yeah. Right? It's Grant nailed it. So the core set hero Gloin, his ability is whenever he takes a point of damage, he gets a resource, and he can just trigger that for as many points of damage as he takes. He can get a resource, pretty much, unless you kill him. He can do that. So it's a very common deck with him to make his hit point pool as large as possible, so you can stack as much damage on him and then just let him generate be your resource generation. And you can do this with multiple ways. You can do this.
And don't forget parting gifts to move those resources to another character.
Right. Yeah. Parting gifts or Errand Rider, the ally that moves.
Yeah, but Errand
one.
Rider only moves one. Parting gifts, you could move them all.
All, yes.
Or Narvi's belt.
Well, that as well.
Yeah, Narvi's belt or a song. Right, to make his resources more flexible. But yeah, you stack up anything to glow more hit points, like Citadel plates, Boots of Erebor. There is a deck I've seen on Rings DB that utilizes the one ring and gives it to him, along with the card that heals him every single turn.
Self-preservation.
No, well-preserved.
Well-preserved, right? Not self-preservation.
Like a master traded, right? Yeah.
Right.
But so for any glowing deck, you need as many healing effects as possible. So very likely you're including, much like a tree bear deck, you're including as many effects as you can. And so Ioreth and Warden will just be repeatable healing effects.
Kind of adjacent to this, guys, let me ask a question. Is there anything in the card pool that says do 1 damage to your hero to do this effect? Because mostly I feel like
damage. I think that's just Freedia that has that.
Treebeard and Quick Beam,
Erkenbrand.
But I mean, is there like a card, like a attachment that deal 1 damage to yourself to do 1 damage? There's not. Right? Not that I'm thinking.
There is the one that allows you to take damage from another ally and place it on to your
Song
hero.
of Mocking.
You've got Song of Mocking, but there's also the Valiant Warrior, is it?
Vigilant Warrior? Vigilant Guard, that's it.
There it is.
Right. So
I knew we'd get there.
Right. I mean, those are prime targets for Ioreth being in a deck because you're going to load up, damage onto one target, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
There's several decks that could use like Ioreth where you're priming damage on one character.
Mm-hmm.
Gimli, Gloin, Erkenbrand, if you're using his ability to cancel shadows.
I feel like Erkenbrand would be okay if you use the Warden, though, because you're not going to be doing Erkenbrand multiple times around, Well, he could defend and then cancel,
It depends on if you're being attacked by a Balrog several times.
I guess. Touche. You win.
But no, in all seriousness, they are both high quality healers. Obviously, the Warden's gold standard. Ioreth is gold plated.
One's 24 karat gold and the other one's like 20. What about the artwork? And then we'll wrap it up here. But what about the artwork versus, when you're comparing them, I feel like Ioreth, I feel like maybe it's because the Warden's been around for so long. I just feel like Ioreth's artwork is just a little bit more, I don't know,
artsy?
I feel a little more healer-y. I feel like the Warden is more cleric-y. Like if I was playing D&D, I'd be like, there's the Warden. He's my cleric. It's my priest as opposed to my healer. But I don't know. Like
it's also
the setting that Ioreth has, I guess, is what I like. She just looks like she's a healer. A classic nurse.
I think you've also got to remember that the Warden of Healing came out in the Dwardow cycle, so it was a little bit of a darker atmosphere to the cards that came out in the Dwarad Elf. There was some cards that obviously had like a light aesthetic, but a lot of them had like this grungier look to them, like a little bit more from a dark place.
Right. Yeah.
But I do like the artwork on both these cards.
Well, they both definitely fit the game, that's for sure. I like Ioreth
Yeah.
a little bit better, but Ted, what about you? Oh, Grant, keep going. I'm sorry.
I like the detail that they've got on the Warden's chest plate. They've got the white tree and like the doors going over the top of the runes. It's like those little bits of detail I actually spot and notice, and it's like they've actually paid attention to what they're doing.
Right. Is it possible that the Warden of Healing is Ioreth? Are they married?
It's quite possible.
Is that a boy or is that a girl? Is it the same person?
The old man joke thing. Like they're both older characters, so I think that's what leads them to having the one single hit point. Which I suppose if we talk about disadvantages, that's one that they both share. Is their one hit point?
So they're susceptible to like Necromancer's Reach and Evil Storm.
Yeah, it's really great sometimes to run to boost their hit points. Like if you put Ioreth can have attachments, so she's not limited in that capacity. So you can put a Squire's Helm. Goes a long way, which is the one-cost leadership attachment that gives an ally +2 hit points. And now you're
Enddraft.
I was going to say Enddraft is my kind of trick there.
Because that's in Sphere.
Right. Yep. Right.
Yeah. So if you put an Enddraft and a Warden, it's like now he's probably there to stay, right?
Oh,
because neither of their abilities actually prevent them from targeting themselves, right? If Ioreth had more hit points, or if Warden did.
Right. It just says character, right?
Yeah. So if you boost their hit points, they can both heal themselves, which is...
And it's also not... And ownership isn't an issue either with either of these guys. Like, it's not your characters or, your allies, your heroes. It's anywhere on the board. Sometimes you have to worry about those sorts of things.
Right. Yep, there are a few effects that do that, but no, they can target any, which is why they're so powerful. And I'd say, I guess, more often than not, most healing effects are broad, but there are some limited ones, right? So they're good.
Well,
they're both strong.
Are they long?
They're both long.
And they're strong, and they're gonna get the friction on. So, lady.
And now I have an image in my head that I didn't have before we started this episode.
You know what's really funny? So, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to start on like June 1st or something. And fans of the show, hold me to this. Is now you can start sharing playlists on like Apple Music and stuff like that. So I think every time I mention a song or somebody sings a song on the show or like makes reference to a song, I think I'm going to put it on a playlist, and we'll just have like the Card Talk playlist.
Okay. Well, the first one on that is clearly Gone Daddy, Gone.
Yeah, Gone Daddy, Gone Berry, Gone. Right. Well, I think I have to start it at a time, like there's been just so many songs, like, and I'm the guy who's editing this, and so I'm like listening to it, and then I'm like there's, the Dire Straits, Money for Nothing made it on an episode, and now here's Baby Got Back just made it on the show, and so like it's just one of those things. So I think that's gonna be like the lowest patron tiers. You get access to the Card Talk playlist, which is definitely worthy of the maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I just make it available to anybody. Maybe it's so bad I give it to the Cardboard of the Rings guys. Here, this is the playlist. You guys, as punishment, you get to listen to the playlist. I don't know. Anyways, silly ideas I have. Anyways,
the random things that happens on the show.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we're
ready to ring these guys.
Yep, that's just where I think David was heading before.
That's That's exactly where I was going. So for anybody who is new to the show or has forgotten how we do this, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made, or not a very good card in the game, coming back full circle about my hosting abilities. But anyways, we'll do this in round robin format. We'll do Ioreth first, and then we'll come back and ring the Warden. So Ted, you get to go first. How would you ring Ioreth here?
I'm going to give Ioreth a 2 ring rating.
Ooh.
For the exact reasons we've been talking for the last half hour. She's a sustainable, repeating healing effect, and the fact that she does cost 0, it gives her some flexibility where if you have to absolutely assign her that 1 point of archery damage versus killing a hero because you didn't have enough healing on the table from her, or you already used her effect, you can, if she goes away, you paid 0 for her. So that she has kind of some ancillary benefits like that. So I give her a 2.
Okay. Grant, what's your thoughts on Ioreth?
Exactly the same as Ted's. I also give her a 2.
Oh man. Well, I'm gonna buck the trend, and I'm gonna say a 3. I'm gonna say that she's still pretty good, but I feel like she's just a little more nichey than what you guys are saying. She's just not as general use as that. But I will say that I think that she still beats out most of the attachment healing cards in the game and event healing cards in the game. So, but still niche enough. And I say niche, but like not truly niche, like a Sylvan Tracker or a Imladris Caregiver or something. Like just niche enough to not be a 2 in my book. So, and then coming back around to the Warden.
Yep. We'll do reverse.
Yeah, we'll do reverse order.
Now you start.
Yeah, and I just, I want to give the Warden a 1 because of how good the Warden is, but that healing ability just isn't flashy. Like it's great, but it just I feel like the ones that I want to give are like real. I guess Unexpected Courage I gave a 1, and it was like that's not necessarily a super flashy ability, but it gives the heroes with a flashy ability to be even flashier. But just something in my gut is saying that the Warden is probably the best healing card in the game, but I still have to give it a 2. It could be a little bit better, but not much. But it's still not like all the slightly negative things add up in my head to make it a 2. So Grant, what about you?
I'm giving it a 1.5.
Oh, she's 4 years in the podcast, and you're still giving half ratings. This is what makes this system highly scientific yet arbitrary.
Yeah. Why the half? Why can't he make it there?
Yeah,
Tell us.
It rounds up to a 2. So you agree with me? Tell me why you agree with me.
I can't quite give him a 1 because, as David said, there's just something that's just not there to make him a 1. But I don't think he's quite at the 2. He's still slightly better than Ioreth.
Still slightly better than I'm giving him credit for.
So 1.5. David may be giving a stick for the point ratings as he has done in the past when we first started. If you haven't checked out those earlier episodes, go back, they're a blast.
Yeah, right. I thought that I had guilted you significantly in seasons 1 and 2 so that you wouldn't ever use a half rating again, but apparently that's not right. Okay.
I just thought
I want to amend. I want to amend.
So I can also guilt you for using half ratings, and maybe that.
If we wanted half ratings, it would just be on the scale from 1 to 20, and then we wouldn't need half ratings. And of course, Grant, we're just joking, but I want to amend. I want to amend my rating. It's my new rating on the Warden is not a 2, but it's a square root 5. So okay, Ted. What's your rating on the Warden? Is it Route 5?
No, no.
Okay.
It's just it's a 1. You guys are nuts. It's a 1. Imagine if he was not in the game. Like, just remove him from the card pool and then replay all the scenarios. Can you do it? Yes. Why? Because you have Ioreth. She's next in line, right? So
can I tell you that I'm running through the whole campaign and I am not using Warden of Healing in my Hobbit deck?
Oh, that's brave.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
no, that's being a sadist.
I think that there's part of you that is relying heavily on the like. You can work around with the current card pool. There's enough cards in the card pool that you don't need the Warden of Healing in every single build that you build. Just like you don't need Unexpected Courage, you don't need Feint, you don't need Sneak Attack. But what they do is they make it easier to play the game. So, and
yes,
like
that's fair. Yeah, if you want to if you want to challenge, don't play with Wardens in any of your decks.
Right. And so that's a challenge. I mean, if you're playing not lore, you're going to have to play with not healing. I mean, if you're playing a mono tactics deck solo, you're not playing with healing. So
oddly enough, what just because we touched on contracts briefly, what kind of actually was really nice is when 3 Hunters and Grey Wanderer came out, because those are both contracts that heal. So it gave those decks, they don't need to play Wardens and any other healing because the healing is built into the contracts, which was kind of neat because it kind of opened up that space in a way.
So your Monosphere Tactics heroes can get healing if you're using Grey Wanderer or 4th or 3 Hunters.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can Grey Wanderer 3 hero 300 Grimbjorn as much as you want, and he's got healing right next to him without Warden. So it's definitely possible, but it's a very strong card, and I think, David, you put it the best. It makes the game easier if you have a lore hero. You have healing covered just by running 3 Wardens, generally speaking, if you can, of course, overcome the card's biggest weakness.
It has to be drawn.
You got to put him in your hand. You can't heal damage from the deck when he's cards number 47, 48, and 49, right?
Yeah. Right. Or 58, 59, and 60.
It's right. Cards number 260, 261, and 262.
Right. Or if you're playing with Grant, it's card number 3.8 and card number 8.2 and card number 61.7.
Precisely.
Yes.
Right. Yep. I give him a 1. Very strong.
I couldn't talk you out of it. Ted, is that the first 1 bomb you've dropped on this?
No, I've given Elrond a 1 for this very same reason. His healing effect is very strong, along with all the stats. And if you just zap him from the card pool, oh wow, some quests get all really hard. Right? If you want to challenge, just play with a different hero.
Right.
Just play with one who's not.
Don't change the scenario. Don't change from easy mode to normal mode or normal mode to nightmare. Just change your hero lineup and give yourself a crutch, right?
Yeah, there are some really brutal quests that damage is like their thing. Archery damage is part of defeating the scenario. And if you don't play Wardens or don't play Elrond, good luck.
Good
luck.
That's
like an achievement level. Like, play this scenario with no healing.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Well, there you have it. Our first ever duel episode where we take 2 cards and talk about them in concert with each other. 2, or if you're Grant, 2.2 cards. So anyways, everybody, thanks for joining us, and tune in again as we talk about more cards in the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.